Da, 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 ba, da, da, ba, ba. Ba, 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba. What's going on, everybody? We are back at it. I'm standing today. Just kind of wanted to shake things up and not be sitting all day long. So most of what I do requires a lot of sitting. So I wanted to kind of get moving a little bit. But I'm excited to chat with you guys. Ooh, losing. Note to self: don't jump around like a jelly bean. I'm excited to talk with you guys about Obi-Wan Kenobi Episode 3 and to kind of lay out my thoughts. And let me know if you can hear me, if I'm coming in clearly and everything's coming in all groovy, because this will be completely pointless if nobody can hear a single fucking thing I'm saying. So let's get into it without further ado. I think my wife stole this from a brewery. I think that's where this cup came from. Don't quote me. Don't send her to prison. But I'm excited to chat with you guys. This is going to be fun. Overall, my overall thoughts about episode 3 is that it's better than episode 1 and 2. Thank Christ there wasn't a chase scene in this fucking episode, because I was going to lose my shit if they did another chase scene. I don't know what it is, but even in this third episode, which I thought was better, the directing and the cinematography is just not good. They picked the wrong director for Boba Fett, and they picked the wrong director for Obi-Wan Kenobi. They didn't. Deborah Chow was not the right pick. Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, they were the right picks. They should have directed this. They're busy on Ahsoka. They should have directed this. They understand Star Wars better than anybody else in the business right now, unless you're talking about, a fan like Star Wars Theory or something like that. But as far as Hollywood people, they understand Star Wars better than anybody else right now. And they should have been the ones to direct this. It was too important of a show to screw it up. And they didn't get it right. They didn't get the right cinematography. They didn't get the right directing. And so although this episode was better, it still had a lot of problems. And I don't know if it's going to be able to recover from just the fundamental bad directing choice. Ewan McGregor's acting his ass off, man. But I just don't like the direction that this is going. I'm trying to hold out hope. I really am. But I don't have. I'm running low. So here are my thoughts so far. I don't know. It's not the actor's fault, right? This isn't Moses' fault. So if you're one of those pieces of shit that's yelling at Moses for her decisions in the show, you're just a piece of shit. I don't like the character, but that's not because it's the fault of Moses. It's the writers and the director that's just totally botching it. I mean, she's doing everything she possibly can. Like everything she possibly can to bring what she can to the character, to make it her own, and to leave a positive stamp on the Star Wars market. But they're just not giving her a lot to work with, and this is just another episode of dropping the ball. I'm sick and tired of just the whininess of the third brother and the third sister. Maybe that's the whole point. Maybe they're just, kind of pathetic villains to begin with. I don't really watch, or don't really read any of the comics with them heavily involved, because I don't like them as characters to begin with. I think it's silly and dilutes the brand of the Siths and dilutes the intimidation that the dark side brings. So I don't read a lot of the comics with them in it, but I watched Rebels, and I couldn't take a single thing that was happening on screen with any of the brothers or the sisters or the Grand Inquisitor. I couldn't take any of it seriously. The spinning lightsabers, I can't take seriously. The constant bickering over who's better and who's greater isn't executed well in this. I know where they're trying to get with it. They're trying to get to that, like, kind of resemble that non-canon content about how, like, the Sith were constantly trying to outdo one another, which was ultimately what caused themselves to turn on themselves, right? It was ultimately what caused themselves to kind of implode, kill each other, and then, Darth Bane came out with the rule of two, and then the rule of two kind of just stuck. And so I see where they're trying to get to with that. It's just not handled well. It's like talking to a bunch of ninth graders. But maybe that's the point. I don't know. But it's really grinding my gears. So all of the scenes where Reva's arguing with, I think it's the third brother, they just fall flat. And it's just a bunch of dialogue. There's not a lot of good execution, not a lot of action. They just yell back and forth to try to show Darth Vader who's the better Inquisitor. Quite frankly, they're both fucking terrible. The best Inquisitor in this whole group is that one sister that doesn't say anything, the alien looking one. She's the best out of all of them. And it's because she doesn't say anything. She just tries to do her job. And that's a big problem. And it's not the actor's fault. They're trying to execute the best they can. It's bad writing. It's poor writing. And the longer that goes on, the more it starts to frustrate me, and the more it dilutes the gravitas of the actual thing that I'm here for, which is the Obi-Wan versus Vader, right? It's the emotions there. I don't even care if they ever fight, which they, spoiler alert, they fight in this, which I thought was too early. But even if they weren't to have a single interaction the entire time, if the emotion is there and the weight of what happened in episode 3 was there, and you could tell, and you could visually see, and you could feel how it affects Obi-Wan. Can't really see because it's a mask, but you could either through dialogue, through flashbacks, through him in the Bacta tank, through dreams, see how it's torturing Vader, and the anger there, and the anguish, and the heartbroken, sad, depressed feeling of failure from Obi-Wan. That would have been enough for this show to be 10 out of 10 for me. But they dilute it with these other storylines that I don't give a shit about. Like, I'm not here for Reva and the other brother to argue back and forth over things that they don't even have the balls to go after and do themselves. So it's just driving me bonkers, man. I'm sick of it. I thought the actress that played Leia, I think it was her birthday this week too. I thought she did so much better in this, which was really nice to see. I never like talking about child actors because, one, it's very difficult to be a good child actor to begin with. So you're almost always going to get flack and criticism. But also, two, like, you're just picking on a kid. There's no winning. So I'm trying to approach her acting choices with this from not so much a quality of her acting, but more so like, what is she being given and what are some of the liberties that she's taking? And I actually really like that, whether it's intentional, whether that's a nod to her as just understanding the character, which maybe she really took the time to understand Padme and Leia, or giving Deborah a little bit of credit for helping her with it, or a combination of both. But she really reminds me of the snarkiness and the warrior and the independent Leia and the strong, independent Padme. She resembles that, which I really appreciate because it reminds me of Padme, her mom, and it makes sense for it to be Leia because that's who Leia is. And so I think she's doing a really good job. I think episode 1 and 2 did not do her any favors with the stupid chase scenes in each of those episodes. So not having a stupid ass chase scene in this episode really helped her. It was more dialogue based. It was more about her mom. It was more about her dad. It was more about learning, understanding who Obi-Wan is and building that relationship, because it makes sense to have a relationship with Obi-Wan. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope. It makes sense for them to at least met once, and for them to build to build enough of a relationship for her to know that, Obi-Wan is the only hope I got. And so I really appreciated that. Conversations on the transport vehicle. They land on, I don't remember the planet name, but they're trying to get back to Tall, right? They're trying to get back to a place where they know they're safe so they can get transport back to Alderaan. He's pretending that that's, Leia is his daughter and they're farmers from Tall and they're trying to get off this planet that they end up on. And I don't remember the planet name, but they end up finding themselves on a transport vehicle and they end up in enemy camp, which was really fun to see. And it's also kind of silly because you can tell that that they cut some corners with the budget, which is also quite a shame because if you're going to do Obi-Wan Kenobi and you're going to do Star Wars, just put the budget in it because people are going to watch it whether it's shit or not. And so seeing some of these budget cuts is kind of frustrating. One of the budget cuts was the skill set and the fight choreography that the clone troopers have. They're absolutely incompetent in this. And they didn't really put a lot of money behind Obi-Wan Kenobi's attire. Like, he's supposed to go undercover. He's not supposed to be giving off Jedi vibes, but he is wearing 100% Jedi robes. Like, he's giving off the most Jedi vibes. And at this point, since Vader knows he's alive, Reva knows he's alive, half of the deployment knows that he's alive, they should have a picture going around to all of the camps nearby of a photo of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So it's hard to believe that these stormtroopers don't know who this guy is when he's wearing Jedi robes and Jedi clothes. He looks exactly like a Jedi. And there should be a photo of him somewhere. Like, they should be briefed on some of the big Jedi out there that, that they would like to capture. I find it hard to believe that if I'm going to go into the Imperial Army and be a stormtrooper, that I don't learn about Jedi, that I don't learn about what they wear or what they look like or how they act or the major players that I'm supposed to be on the lookout for, so I can call in the Vader, right? I should know what Yoda looks like. I should know what Obi-Wan Kenobi looks like. I should know all of these major Jedi masters that escaped. I should know what they look like so that I can call it in if I were to ever see it. So you would think they would go through some like basic Jedi material just so you can understand what you're up against. Nothing. And so they're just totally incompetent. The fight choreography wasn't the best. Ewan McGregor's fight choreography was really good, but the stormtroopers were just mumbling, fumbling idiots. But that's kind of the joke of the stormtroopers, is that they are mumbling, fumbling idiots. But the thing that I appreciated about one of the rumors that would always go around about episode 4 was that they were mumbling, fumbling idiots on purpose. They were actually, they're actually incredibly dangerous. They're extremely accurate. They're extremely competent, but they let Leia, Luke, Han, Chewie, they let them go on purpose, right? In episode 4, they escape the Death Star. Obi-Wan dies, right? Sacrifices himself. And Leia says, they let us go. It's the only thing that makes sense for our escape, which implies that they're better than what they're leading on to be, right? They're more accurate. They don't just miss broadsides of barns, but they still make them incompetent in this, which was kind of, I think, a lost opportunity to show some skill and justify why the Empire is so powerful. Because the more incompetent you make the Empire, the more confused people become about how are these people in power at all? Like, they're mumbling, fumbling idiots. They can't figure it out. How do they hold down a galaxy? Is it just the fact that they have so many numbers? But who's fronting the bill? Who's funding all of this? So they have to at least be good at what they do, you would think. But the more incompetent you make the army, the harder it is to believe that they could even hold it together. So I would have liked to see more competency from the stormtroopers. I think that would make more sense. But overall, I really liked seeing that stormtrooper get cut in half by the laser gate. Very cool to see on Disney Plus. Never thought I'd see that on Disney Plus, but it was really cool to see. I liked seeing Obi-Wan Kenobi actually be able to hit something, even though it was up close and it's pretty much impossible to miss. He brought his athleticism, he brought his accuracy, and I maybe even brought a little bit of the Force along with him to make sure that he was accurate, because in episode 2, he couldn't hit a broadside of the barn, but in episode 3, he could hit anything. So there's a little bit of an incongruency with his skill set, but maybe it's just developing. It's just coming back to him over time. So I can buy that as long as he continues to get better every episode. So if his shot gets more accurate and he becomes more deadly as each episode goes on, I'm good with it. If he's fluctuating between being competent and a good warrior versus not being a good fighter, that I have a problem with. So far it's showing a trajectory of just increasing his skill set over time. So as long as that continues to ring true, I'm good with him not being able to hit anything in episode 2 and being able to hit anything in episode 3. So I'm okay with it so far. But one thing that really, I didn't mention in episode 1 and 2 review, but one thing that really kind of breaks this show is the fact that Reva has the skill to read minds. So it's something that they introduced with Kylo Ren. I hate the ability. I don't think it should be in movie Star Wars. It's fine if it's in non-canon stuff, in comics and books and stuff. It's fine because the power levels are just so insane anyways. But to put it on screen comes with just a flood of problems. One, skill set. Vader never uses this power, but he's hands down better than Reva. He's hands down better than Kylo Ren. It's not even close. He would win by a large margin, but he never uses that power. So it breaks canon for episode 4, where he's trying to interrogate Leia. And it breaks episode 1 and 2 because Reva uses a Jedi mind trick, uses mind reading to find out, where Obi-Wan is going in episode 2, but didn't use that on Lars in episode 1. Because if she had used it on Lars, she would have just read his mind, figured out that Obi-Wan was already on the planet 15 feet away, and that Luke was there, and that he was protecting Luke Skywalker, and she somehow knows that Anakin Skywalker is Vader. She would make that connection instantly, and the whole show would be over. That's why I have a huge problem with that power, is it breaks a lot of the decision-making processes that kind of have to be logically made for the sake of the show. So I hope to never see that power again in the show. I hate that power, especially seeing it from such a low-level Force user. That doesn't make sense either. And I just don't want to see it. I never want to see it again. Let me know in the comments. Maybe you love that power. I fucking hate it. But I did like that for whatever, as long as she wasn't interacting with the brothers or the other sisters, I thought her acting was a lot better than this. I believed more of what she was doing. When she was having that conversation with Vader, I liked that scene. Love seeing Vader in his digs, right? Love seeing Vader in his corner office. That was kind of cool. But I liked that scene with her. I liked that scene with her looking at I think it was the Jedi symbol. I like that. It made her angry. I already know where this is going. They're doing a very short redemption arc with her, which really frustrates my gears. I don't want to see it. That kind of goes towards the leaks that I talked about before the show was released. So I'm definitely thinking that they're setting up Reva as one of those kids from the very first scene of episode 1, as one of those kids. Maybe she sees Anakin Skywalker killing younglings, and for whatever reason he spares her, which I think doesn't make any fucking sense at all. See, this is starting to frustrate me. It doesn't make any sense at all, because the only people that really know Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker, is like Thrawn, Palpatine, Admiral. I know there's an admiral that knows he's Darth Vader. I'm trying to think. It's not coming to me. It's the admiral from Episode 4. He blows up on the Death Star. For whatever reason, his name isn't coming to my head. Those really are the only three people that know that Anakin Skywalker is Vader, from my knowledge, unless we're going into comics and stuff. But from my knowledge, those are really the only three people that should even know that he's Darth Vader. He fought with Thrawn in the war, fought with, obviously Palpatine, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for him to keep Reva alive. He killed everybody else. Why would you keep her alive? So I don't like that she knows that's Anakin, because if she was able to make that connection, Vader would kill her instantly, because he doesn't want people to know who he is. That's part of what makes him so ruthless, is anyone who knew that he used to be Anakin Skywalker, he just executed, just murdered. And so I'm not really sold on that. I mean, he even killed some of his own clone troopers that knew that he had made the jump, right? So I'm not really sold on it. But I liked her acting in this. I thought it was a lot better, and it was a lot more believable. And I appreciated that they made that adjustment. Now let's get to the big thing that everybody wants to talk about. The big battle, the big fight scene, right? Darth Vader was awesome. Bringing James Earl Jones back in, who's one of my favorite actors of all time. I respect that man for everything he's done for the acting community. Bringing him back in to voice Vader was just such a treat. So cool. And having Hayden Christensen in the suit was also very, very neat. I love seeing that that dream sequence, not a dream, but a mirage of Anakin Skywalker standing out in the desert. He looked menacing, upset, angry. It was really good. It was a really good projection of how Anakin really feels about Obi-Wan in this moment of his life. Really, really cool. I liked seeing kind of an aged Hayden Christensen. He looks good for his age, and it was really nice to see. And he is the coolest looking Jedi, man. When he's wearing those robes, he looks awesome. Loved seeing that. Loved hearing James Earl Jones behind the mask again. And when he lands on the planet, seeing that shadow of Vader walk against the very, very cool, watching him turn the sense that Anakin Skywalker is on planet, and you could feel the despair and sadness and fear hit him all at once. He looks out the door, and Vader's just killing people, bringing children out, executing sons. You see this part where he brings this father's son, pulls him out the window, and just breaks his neck. So brutal. just striking fear into not just the village, but all of that was for Obi-Wan, right? You could tell that entire scene was for him to say, this is your fault. You turned me into this. Not taking any of the blame for himself, right? He's blaming it all on Obi-Wan. And now not only are you going to pay, but everybody else is going to pay. And so that was really, really cool to see. Very cool to see. And then they ruined it. I didn't like the fight scene. I thought it was disappointing. I thought it was too early in the series. They should have pushed it 2 episodes. Maybe they'll do another fight scene, which I hope was better. Because one of the things that Hayden Christensen said in one of the interviews is that they went back to prequel style fighting. Certainly a shit didn't show up in this episode, because that was terrible fight choreography, horrible cinematography, terrible directing, and kind of a wet paper bag, quite honestly. It started off really strong. The whole scene in the village, killing a bunch of people. Obi-Wan kind of runs away. Vader does this nice Western showdown, very classic for the Star Wars industry. Lights his lightsaber. Obi-Wan pulls out his lightsaber, looks at it, scared as shit, doesn't want to fight him, is mad at himself for turning him into this, maybe blames himself a little bit. has a lot of different complex emotions going on. And instead of lighting his lightsaber and going to battle, he runs away. That's how little, like, that's how not a Jedi he is right now. A Jedi would never do that. They would stand their ground and they would fight. Or they would retreat for a purpose, but he just ran away. Right? That was really cool to see, that he's just how much of not a Jedi he feels anymore. He's still a Jedi, but he just doesn't feel that way. And that was a really complex emotion that I really appreciated. And then, I loved this part of this kind of like cat and mouse game. Vader speaks and you can hear his breathing, and Obi-Wan, not out of fear, but out of instinct, lights his lightsaber. But what was really cool is that he didn't turn into Obi-Wan Kenobi. He lit his lightsaber into Ben Kenobi. So cool. What a neat little touch. Very, very cool touch on Ewan McGregor's side of things, to really put it all together. And it was very, very cool to see that transition. He's transitioning away from Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's trying not to be that person, but he doesn't know who he is without that person. That's who he was for 30, 40 years, right? And so walking away from that, trying to be someone else, who is that person? Who is Ben? I know who Ben is from the perspective of this crazy old hermit who lives on the outskirts of Tatooine and works at a meat market. But who's Ben when it comes to dueling? Who's Ben when it comes to lightsaber combat? What does that person look like? How does that person fight? How does that person approach a fight? And he doesn't know those answers yet. And so it was really nice to see that show up. The instincts of 30, 40 years of battle and repetition and training show up instantly when it really needed to. Boom, lightsaber. And you could tell that there was conviction in his face in that moment, like he was ready. But it wasn't Obi-Wan. It was someone else. And that was nice to see. And then Obi-Wan kind of turns the dune and sees Vader's buttons. Vader's not very good at hiding in the darkness because those buttons are just glowing. So Vader comes out of the shadows and he runs away again. He doesn't want any part of this. He doesn't want any part of fighting Anakin, mostly because it's breaking his heart knowing that that's who he is now, and he's going to have to fight him again. And he doesn't know if he wasn't ready for the first time. Having to do it now, certainly not ready now. And so he has to bring himself to do this fight. Sooner or later, they kind of emulate episode 5. So in episode 5, Luke Skywalker is fighting Darth Vader. And Darth Vader is impressed with the fact that Luke escapes the chamber, right? Because he's going to get carbon frozen. And then Luke kicks him off the bridge, right? And then Luke fights Vader again and learns that he's not a real Jedi yet because he doesn't know how to deal with force powers. And Vader knocks him out the window. And then they land in this kind of corridor, and Luke's kind of walking through, and you can't hear anything. And out of nowhere, Darth Vader strikes a blow for Luke's head, right? And Luke barely blocks it. And Vader was hiding behind the corner, right? But you can't hear anything. He's holding his breath, which is really, really cool. And that's what he does in this scene. He holds his breath until he's right up on Obi-Wan's back, and he goes for a strike. And Obi-Wan, being a savvy Jedi that he is able to defend himself, but you can tell he's not ready for this fight. He doesn't want to fight him. He's a little out of practice. Some people on the internet are saying, why is he out of practice? You would think that someone whose sole mission is to train the most important person when ready would be practicing and staying in shape. I see that argument, but I also argue back saying, like, even though you sometimes know you have a job to do, your mental state is largely what's going to depend. Your mindset is largely going to dictate, there's the right word, how you execute on your job. we do it every day. We know we have things that we need to do for work, but if you're not showing up to work the way you need to because something's going on at home with your wife or your husband or your kids or whatever, your money's not right, you're broke, you're behind on medical debt, that starts to leak into your job. You start to underperform. I could totally see that happening with being immensely depressed and heartbroken and sad and angry and all these other complex emotions that a Jedi is not used to having to deal with very well. Not having anyone to talk to about it, stuck in a cave and not doing his job very well. So I could see him losing sight of that aspect of his mission. So I actually kind of appreciated that he was not ready for the fight, not very good at fighting, and that Vader says, age has made you weak. And that kind of replicates what he says in episode 4, which is, your powers are weak, old man. Now, this is why I think they need to do one more battle, because Vader needs to lose this fight. What he says in episode 4 is, when I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master. Obi-Wan says, only a master of evil, Darth. So if Vader comes out on top significantly from this series, it defeats the purpose of that line, right? And it defeats the purpose of your powers are weak, old man, because why would you already said that 10 years ago or whatever, right? So he needs to figure his shit out. Ben needs to figure it out and go back, do one more battle and significantly dominate, I think is how this should go. Whether or not it goes that way, Disney fucks up pretty much everything that they put their hands on, so I'm not so sure, but I think that's how it should go. But I appreciated in the moment the fact that he was not ready and that he was poorly defending himself. And, he's supposed to be the best defensive fighter of all Jedi time. He's certainly barely that in this. So I appreciated that. But here's what really frustrated me. The cinematography of this fight scene is fucking horrible. It's horrible. It's close up when it shouldn't be. It's light years away for some fucking reason. I have no idea why they're shooting this fight scene from a football field away. You can't see anything. It's in the middle of the dark. The fight choreography isn't great. Makes sense why Obi-Wan's fight choreography isn't going to be great. If you're going to go down the path of he's out of practice, his fight choreography shouldn't be great. He should be barely staying in the game by poorly defending himself. But Vader's got no excuse. He should be all over the ball. He should be able to really bring some true lightsaber combat skill. And he's not either. It's episode 9 shit. And I don't understand who the fuck they're hiring for the choreography of these fight scenes, because it's horrible. It's horrible. I miss the prequels. I miss the dedication that those actors went through to really learn those fight scenes, really learn that choreography, even though it was a lot of twirling and unnecessary spins and things like that. That certainly showed more of a competent fighting style than just swinging your lightsaber wildly for no reason. And so I don't know what's going on, but it's driving me bonkers. I just want to see competent, logical movesets. That's all I want to see. It's just this sword. It makes sense to swing it this way and why I'm swinging it now. But none of the way that they're fighting in these recent shows makes any sort of fucking sense. And that shows up here too. It makes a little sense for Obi-Wan to be that way. But Vader's got no excuse. Even Obi-Wan barely has an excuse, because you should still know the basics. Even if you're out of practice, your instincts should still be able to show up. You still should know that this is your guard position, right? Not this is your guard position. This doesn't protect you at all. If your lightsaber is constantly, hanging out here, that's not going to protect you. You want to stay centered to your body as often as you possibly can. And they don't do that here. They do really long, pauses, right? Like lightsaber on lightsaber lock pauses, which I don't like in Star Wars. They did a lot of that in episode 4, 5, and 6. I don't like that in saber combat, whether it's lightsabers or swords, because all you got to do is just drag your sword down the shaft of the of the blade, and you're just going to chop their arms off. So it doesn't make any sense to get into a locked position. They do less locks in episodes 1, 2, and 3. It's more twirly, but it's less locks. And although locks look cool because you can put the colors of the lightsabers reflecting on their faces, it doesn't make any logical sense for them to be in a lock. And so the choreography, the cinematography, and the directing for this fight scene is atrocious. It's frustrating. It's disappointing. You had 17 years to do this right, and you can't get a single fight scene that people have been waiting almost 2 decades for. You can't do it right. And I just don't, and that goes back to just, they picked the wrong director for this. They picked the wrong director for it. Super frustrating stuff. Then we get to the end of the fight scene. And I have things that I really like about this. I have things that really frustrate me about this. The things I like is I loved that Vader is playing with his food. You know, he's a cat playing with the mouse, right? So he gets the better hand. Makes sense for him to do that. Uses his force powers. Makes sense to use that to showcase how much more powerful he's become due to the dark side. To, you know, raise Obi-Wan Kenobi up into the air and throw him into the fire, right? Because earlier in the fight scene, Obi-Wan says, "What have you become?" And he said, "I became what you made me," which was powerful. So powerful, because that he's blaming Obi-Wan for everything that happened rather than taking responsibility for what happened. And that's classic dark side, right? Is to blame other people for your problems. And so you get to the end of the fight scene, and Obi-Wan gets dragged into this fire pit that Darth Vader makes. And he makes it menacingly, and he makes it slow, and he lights this fire saying, like, "I'm going to torture you." And he puts him in the fire, and the cinematography in this is nice because they do a low shot looking up at Vader, and you can see the fire reflecting off of his suit, which is reminiscent of him being in the flames of the lava pits of Mustafar, which is exactly where he lives, right? He's overcoming this hatred with fire, and he drags Obi-Wan into it and is burning his arms, and you can hear him screaming and yelling, and he's playing with Obi-Wan. He's toying with him. He's like, "I'm going to torture the shit out of you." And he's like, "This is just the beginning of your pain," which was really cool. You could tell, like, I could kill you right now, but I'm going to keep you alive, and I'm going to fuck you up, which was really sweet. Really like seeing that. That's Darth Vader. And then they had to ruin it. So they bring in this new character. Like, we don't have enough new characters already. This new character who's kind of like the smuggler who shoots the stormtrooper that's going to go, you know, basically place Obi-Wan under arrest so Darth Vader can take him back to his place and fuck him up. Shoots him, and then shoots probably like a gasoline chamber or some sort of fuel tank or something like that. And so this is where it gets super fucking bonkers. Darth Vader, he basically doused the fire from this fire pit that he made by using the Force, right? So that the clone trooper could walk over and arrest Obi-Wan. But then this woman relights the fire pit using this fuel tank. And then Vader just stops pursuing Obi-Wan. I have no idea why. Like, I can't figure it out. He blew out the fire before. Why can't you just blow out this one? Is your force powers on like buffer? You can only use it every 5 to 10 minutes, because it doesn't make any sense why you can't just blow this fire pit away and just walk across and arrest Obi-Wan then, or just pick him up with the Force like he just did 5 seconds ago and bring him over to him, or jump over it like you see in episode 5 that Darth Vader can jump. You see it in episode 6 that Darth Vader can jump. So why can't we do it here? He's younger here. He should be able to jump more so now than ever. It doesn't make any fucking sense. He just gives up. He lets a droid come over, tend to Obi-Wan, drag Obi-Wan away, and he just walks away. The only 2 reasons I can think of as to why they would do this is, one, they made Obi-Wan so much weaker in this fight than Darth Vader that they couldn't come up with a logical reason to get Darth Vader out of it. So they just had to end the scene. And they didn't put enough time or care or effort into figuring out a way to make it logical. They're just like, fuck it, just end the scene. No one's going to care because the fight scene was so cool. No one's going to care that this is how it ends. I hope that that's not the case. What I hope it is reason number 2, which is Vader didn't give a shit. He wanted him to escape, not to have to continue to pursue him, because why would you want to continue to pursue somebody that you already had in custody, right? It doesn't make any sense. But to use Obi-Wan to get to the other people, to get to more of the resistance, more of the people that he's working with, to understand more of the resistance fighters, of the resistance that's being built to go up against the Empire. That makes a little bit more sense. It's a tactical decision. I'm going to let you go so you can lead me to the real important people, because you're not the top of the chopping block here. You're low on the totem pole, buddy. There's more important people that I'm trying to find, and if I follow you, I have a good feeling I'm going to find them. That's what I'm hoping it is, because that would be a tactician move, and that makes more sense. Makes sense for Vader. It's on brand. He was a general in the war. He understands tactical maneuvers. He understands the psychology around going for the important people in a war. So it makes more sense for that to be the case. And chronologically, it would make sense for them to be going up against resistance fighters now. It's 10 years after Episode 3. They should have, which is right around Rebels, I would imagine. If not just before Rebels. So it's similar era. So Vader's familiar with some of the resistance fighters out there. So it would make more sense for Vader to tell himself, okay, I could easily go after him and do exactly what I planned, but someone just shot this. It's an outside person. Maybe they're just working with Obi-Wan directly, but I can beat this guy anytime I want, so I'm not too worried about it. But if I'm wrong and this person has to, is kind of related to the Resistance or related to smuggling people off this planet or knows where other Jedi are, it makes more sense to let him get away and for us to follow him. That makes sense, and I want to see that happen over episodes 4, 5, and 6. But my feeling is that it's the latter. It's the former. My feeling is that they just didn't know how to end the scene, so they just ended the scene in the most retarded way. So, not to use that word loosely, I shouldn't use that word. So, those are my thoughts. There's too many new characters. I don't know enough about this kind of smuggler woman, but I don't think they need to introduce smuggling of children into the Star Wars galaxy yet. I'm fine with them introducing that, but maybe not in this particular show. I also don't think that they introduced it very respectfully. So what they're doing is they're doing a kind of a nod to smuggling people out of slavery. What's the big problem here, though? You're smuggling in real life. People smuggled Black people out of the South. In Star Wars, they decided to make all the people that are getting away white people and all the people chasing them to murder them Black people. That's the problem. So fuck Disney for doing that, because that's not very well thought out. Like, everybody that's in this show that enters the kind of the tunnels of this planet to get to the hangars to escape this world are white people. White girl, white man. But all the people chasing him are Black people. Well, I mean, Darth Vader is white, but he wears a black suit, right? They all wear black. The aliens wear black. It's the opposite. So very poorly done. They shouldn't have done that. They should have thought it through more thoroughly and done it more appropriately. I don't even know if they know that that's a thing, if they know that they did that. I don't even know if there's anyone else on the internet that really gives a shit or even noticed that they did that. But I noticed that. I thought that was interesting. And then the last thing that bothered me was that Reva's tracking Leia, right? Leia is significantly ahead of Reva in the tunnels to get to the hangar. But somehow Reva just shows up at the hangar at the end. It doesn't make any sense. Like, Leia's at least 5 football fields away. Like, we're talking hundreds of yards away. But out of nowhere, Reva just makes up ground and then some and gets to the hangar before Leia does. I have no idea how that's even remotely possible. So there's just some plot armor problems. There's directing cinematography issues. There's choreography issues. Ewan McGregor is acting his ass off. He's just acting his ass off. I mean, he's killing it. Hayden Christensen is killing it. Even the girl who plays Leia, it killed it in this episode. I'm super pumped about that. But it's just being bogged down by these weighted boots. And they didn't take the time to flush this story out. They didn't take the time to really think this through and say, what is the story we're trying to tell and how do we tell it the best way possible? They're just throwing a bunch of things that don't matter in there for the sake of throwing it in there and saying, we're checking off these cultural boxes. And it's driving me bonkers. I just want to see the story unfold in a way that makes sense and is depicted well on screen. So props to the actress that played Moses. Props to her for really bringing the acting chops in this. Love that. Props to Leia, props to Ewan, and props to Hayden Christensen. Love seeing James Earl Jones back. Overall, I thought this episode was the best of the 3 so far. I give this episode a solid 7, close to an 8. But these negative things that are just bogging down the show, it's extra weight that it doesn't need. And so the cinematography, the choreography, and the directing is really the big problem here. They did not pick the right director for this. And the writing's not good either. So though it's not the actor's fault in this episode. It's everything behind the camera, which is really disappointing. And it's just lack of execution, a lack of prep, and lack of care. And that's textbook Disney for you. But it's a solid 7. It's much better than episodes 1 and 2. Episodes 1 and 2 frustrated the hell out of me. I thought it was a strong start to the series, but not nearly where it needed to be, nor where it should be for being 17 years, since the last episode. Everybody knows what this show should be, and they had all the reason in the world to make it well thought out and well executed, and they just kind of fucked it up. So this is a lot better than episodes 1 and 2. But they still have some things to iron out. So a strong 7. I'm happy with this episode. It's a strong 7 for me, but they really need to fix some of these things going into episodes 4, 5, 6. Otherwise, it's going to accumulate enough to where the show gets worse. And I just don't want to see that. So those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down below, and like, comment, subscribe, and share. And maybe you disagree with me entirely, and that's totally fine. I like having those conversations in the comments below, and I want to hear your thoughts. So you can always check out more videos right now, and I will see you in the next episode. Talk soon.